Thank you, Adam and Don, for the invitation. I appreciate it. Good morning to all of you. As Adam said, I'm CEO of Lutheran Social Service of Minnesota. We are one of the ELCA's social ministry organization. In our case, serving on behalf of the 6 synods of the ELCA in all 87 counties of the state of Minnesota. If you are a Lutheran pastor in another state, there's a Lutheran Services in America organization near you. There are 300 plus Lutheran Services in America organizations across the United States and the Caribbean doing similar work. So if there's anything you hear today that you want to hear more about, you can ask your local organization. If you are not a Lutheran pastor and are somewhere in the United States, there are still 300 Lutheran Services in America organizations somewhere near you, not to mention our colleagues at Catholic Charities and thousands of other social ministry nonprofits if you want to follow up and hear more. I was asked by Adam to think through what the nonprofit institutions of the church can share with the church about stewardship. It's been a fascinating journey to think about that, talk to lots of folks, and I've changed my presentation 7 times while listening to all of you over the last couple of days. But first, a blatant advertisement. Several people have mentioned in the last few days people in their churches struggling with financials, struggling with debt. Lutheran Social Service of Minnesota has a national financial counseling and debt management service available to all. You can write down this 1-888 number, and anyone in America can call that for free financial counseling for an hour or so. What they would get is a sense of the current budget, the budget they would hope for, and some thoughts about how to get there. If they are eligible and interested, they could sign up for a debt management program, which sometimes goes 3 to 5 years, until someone completely pays off every dime of their debt and learns to live without debt. But the first call is free to anyone in America. If you happen to be a member of the Portico Benefits, there are additional benefits to you. We have a contract with Portico Benefits to offer additional benefits to their members. But more importantly, callers to this number will discover unconditional love and grace and our understanding that it is hard for people to negotiate today's financial markets. No shaming, blaming sin, just love and grace. My inspiration in my work is John 10:10. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. Our new vision statement over the last year is that all people have the opportunity to live and work in community with full and abundant lives. If it wasn't enough that Jesus told us clearly and plainly what his intention was in one sentence, he went on to show us, right? 180 gallons of wine at the wedding at Cana, as I understand it. 153 fish, 12 baskets of leftovers. I used to wonder, why are these numbers in the Bible? And I've come to learn that it's because Jesus is trying to tell us that his intention for all of us is over the top, more than we need, abundance. And if that were not enough, my friend Jennifer from Connecticut, is she here this morning? Helped me yesterday to re-find Mark 8, where Jesus says to his disciples, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes and fail to see? Do you have ears and fail to hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect?" They said to him, 12. "And the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect?" And they said to him, 7. Then he said to them, "Do you not yet understand? I came that they might have life and have it abundantly." Now that is a statement of faith. If you want some facts, my favorite economist, Jeffrey Sachs, wrote the book, The End of Poverty, after the year 2000, where he demonstrated that there is enough capital for the first time on the planet Earth to end abject poverty in our lifetimes. I appreciate we've been talking about people struggling with finances, people struggling with debt, etc. But this is the first generation on the planet Earth with enough capital to end abject poverty in our lifetimes. We are still living in the richest country on Earth, in the richest time in the history of history. So I hope you take that home with you. I've heard a couple people mention to this meeting that it might be shaming to ask people today to give, or to give a lot, or to tithe. I believe that it's excluding and demeaning not to invite everyone into their Christian vocation of sharing what they have for the communal good. Yes, people are struggling. Yes, there are greater and greater disparities in wealth. We see that every single day. That's a reality. But this is a reality too. Someone in a breakout yesterday said, these days we've learned that if you say it enough, it becomes true. What if we said this enough until it became true? A little history. In 1988, with the formation of the ELCA, the institutions of the church were kicked out of the nest as only a loving mother bird would do. Guess what? We survived. How? We went to Indiana University Center of Philanthropy, and we learned the art of philanthropy. You can too. I want you to see our budget from 20 years ago and our budget last year. The first thing you'll notice is it's much bigger total budget. Our total philanthropy has gone up by more than 3 times, but is half the percentage of our total budget than it used to be. The total from the church has gone down by a third, from 1.5 million to $1 million, but I'm so proud to say that we still receive $1 million a year from congregations. These are congregation budgets. Last year, we got a gift from half of the Lutheran congregations in Minnesota, and over a 5-year period, we get a gift from 3/4 of the congregations in Minnesota. But the big difference is the difference in the total giving from individuals, from $0.4 million 20 years ago to $4.6 million today. And I know what some of you will go right to thinking, they found a few millionaires to fund the budget. But I want you to know I asked my team yesterday, and they told me that in 2017, this $4.6 million represents an average gift of $627 from 6,823 people. If you're wondering who these amazing people are, and you are a Lutheran pastor in Minnesota, these are your members. So I really, really want that to sink in. This generosity is from your members. The other is things like the United Way and private foundations. And just in case you're wondering about the rest of the picture, 82% of our revenue comes from government grants with county, state, and federal government, so that when you pay taxes and expect your government to take care of people with disabilities, older adult, homeless youth, they contract with us to do that. And our organization looks very much like the LSSs of North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, et cetera, in terms of our pie chart where our revenue comes from. We are so grateful to the church who started our ministry 153 years ago, but our 5-year plan says to ask not what your church can do for you, but what you can do for your church. And we are imagining more every year services that we can provide in collaboration with congregations to help them love and serve the neighbors in their local communities, like the LIRS, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, Circle of Welcome, Congregational Co-Sponsorship of Refugees, which is a new program this year, and our neighbor-to-neighbor companions, organizing seniors who are willing to give some time with seniors who need some support, with stipended volunteers. We can come in and do the training, the background checks, and help congregation get that program started to help congregations serve their own members and others in the community. Last year, I got a call from Pete Royce. He's at the Southeastern Minnesota Synod of the ELCA, and he wanted to put together a financial dream team of institutional fundraisers from the church to talk about new revenue sources for the Synod. And the first evening we got together over dinner, and we said, "What do you want to raise money for?" He says, "The Synod." I said, "For what?" "To have a church in southeastern Minnesota." "For what?" He goes, all right. And he went back to the Synod Council, and they came back with, "To proclaim the gospel and feed the hungry." Yes, now that you can raise money for. So what would your church say is your for what? I'm going to show you one of our fundraising videos that we use at our events, and as you watch it, you'll see people with placards holding up saying, "LSS did this for me," or "LSS did that for me," and I want you to imagine members in your church holding up the placard that says, "My church did this for me," as you watch this.
flood was in June of 2012, and I never saw so much rain in my life. I cried, top of my stairs, as I watched that water go up there, the third step. I think the greatest thing that ever happened to me in this whole ordeal was Cheryl Monette. She got me through everything and fought hard for me. I'm very grateful for the help Lutheran Social Service gave me. Gave me some dignity back.
Camp is unbelievable. Every year it teaches me, again, what it means to be compassionate and grateful. And I can't even imagine the type of girl I would be without it. It taught me so many amazing lessons that I can't give back enough.
As a young child, our family was forced to flee our home country of Somalia. We received a word that our family was going to be resettled in the United States, and we made our journey to Pelican Rapids, Minnesota, with assistance of Lutheran Social Service of Minnesota. Having a friend, having someone there for you is an amazing thing, and that's something that I will never forget.
LSS Senior Nutrition has been in Warren for 40 years. We have been very active with the seniors in the area. Currently now, out of our kitchen here in Warren, we serve approximately 40-50 people a day. And we also cater to a nearby town Mondays and Fridays, and to another town which is 10 miles away.
Here I volunteer 1 day a week on Friday, and then I just help in the kitchen mostly to prepare the meals and stuff. I deliver usually 2 times a month. Hi there, Marie. How are you today? It's fun to just deliver and to see these people that you know, to go into their homes and give them a meal.
Not having parents there as a teenager was a lot of confusion. I had no hope, nothing. And LSS has supported me and has gave me suggestions, parenting group, therapy, goal planning for me to achieve what I want to do in life. And now I'm working full time. My son is 13, 14 years of recovery, graduated from college twice, and I find hope.
My life is perfect and wonderful and no complaints.
If it wouldn't have been for LSS, he probably wouldn't be the man that he is today.
Life is good all the time.
You feel like you're alone and you don't know what to do. It's almost desperation.
Once we found help with LSS, they sat down, talked to us, and they set up a debt management program for us, and we worked with them. In less than 4 years, we were able to pay that off.
It felt tremendous.
Once we decided to move forward with adoption, we very quickly actually made the choice to move forward with LSS. And it was about 2.5 weeks later that she called one evening and said, "I think I found a little girl for you." She shared that she's a toddler, she's had open heart surgery, she's living here in Minnesota, and she has a hearing loss. And I don't know that she even got the words out of, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." So I felt strongly that through God's hands this was supposed to happen.
I grew up in a really turbulent household that wasn't really safe. And at 8 years old, I really feared for what was going to happen next. And so I walked and I called the police, and I ended up going to Bethany Crisis Shelter. And the staff told me that regardless of what was happening, that things were going to get better. They were going to be okay. And they ended up getting better. I found a wonderful family, and this foster family I found a couple years down the road. And with their support, the support of LSS, I'm now the youth minister at my local parish and working with youth, engaging them on domestic poverty issues, and really trying to strive towards a stronger community here in Duluth.
He's from Saigon City, Vietnam, and since his dad had done some work for the American government during the war, what happened was then that they were cut off from any additional education. He chose to escape from his area and come away to the United States. I was working for Lutheran Social Service at the time, and one of the refugee resettlement and unaccompanied minor staff person came down to my office and said, "Monica, would you ever consider taking in a foster son from our unaccompanied minors program?" I remember her looking at her watch and saying, "Well, he's going to be coming in on the airport at about 4:30 this afternoon, so would it be possible for you to really consider that?" And Dave works with railroads, so he was out in the Bismarck area. And at the time, there were no cell phones, of course, so we didn't have any communications. And I thought, leap of faith. You really need to be the kind of person that you were raised to be and help others. And we said, well, let's, give it a try. And my heart said, you need to help people. That was the day that really changed our lives, because home has been one of the most unique gifts that a family could ever have.
There were times when I was afraid,
not knowing what the next day would bring,
or if I would survive.
But someone from LSS walked with me
and fought for me.
Because you cared.
I have my health
and stability.
I have hope,
a full life,
meaning and purpose,
and confidence that I can do anything.
Thank you for being there for me.
as a friend,
counselor,
a parent,
and neighbor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm grateful that LSS has been chosen to receive the offering at your closing worship today. I'd like to invite each of you to consider putting the largest bill you have in your wallet today into that offering plate. Or if you don't carry cash in your wallet anymore, you can try the electronic approach to giving. Maybe just for fun, maybe to try something new, but for all of it, so that with your support, we can continue to support these beautiful and resilient people as they change their lives. And what are your church's outcomes? Those stats somebody talked about yesterday, the baptisms, weddings, funerals, are a life, or a family's life, children brought to new life in Jesus Christ, or confirming their faith, a couple joined together for better or worse, till death do they part, a soul being commended to the Lord after a celebration of their life. You meet people in the most intimate moments of their lives. You have stories. You have better stories than I do. Do you tell them? Do you let people tell them themselves? We were in a breakout here the other day and people were talking about that. Some people ask people to come to the pulpit and tell their personal story about why they love their church. More and more people are turning to video, sometimes easier. Someone said it was easier for a couple in their own living room to let somebody hold up a cell phone while they talked to take a video of their story. Can you imagine the woman who everyone came to her husband's funeral this last year and surrounded her with dinners and were there for her at the hospital, not wanting to say thank you to her congregation? The college student who's gone off and could come back and say, my first year or my first semester at college wasn't easy, but I was so grateful for my congregation who sent the care package and how my congregation prepared me to go out into the world. Or a couple that's been going through marriage counseling and then getting married at the church, and half the church came to the wedding, and now they're so in love. Can you imagine they would not want to say thank you to their congregation for that? Uncomfortable? We never tell stories that exploit the storyteller or the audience. Somebody said something the other day about those things you see on TV that make everybody weep, and we never try to make the audience weep, and we never try to make the person telling the story to weep. We wait for people to look back on their stories after they're done with us. As you can see, all of ours were about outcomes. Those stories of their own resilience and strength, not pity. And we have found over and over again that telling the story is often additional healing from whatever someone has experienced. I just wanted to add this as sort of an aside. We've seen an upswing in attendance at our fundraising events this year. In addition, of course, to the hard work of our staff, we believe that people are coming to hear uplifting, positive, good news. Let's see, who has the best good news on the whole planet? My friend Kate Ryer, who's the campus pastor here at the University of Minnesota, told me this year that the Gen Zs are coming back to campus ministry, not for the service projects, for the worship. Wow, what can we do with that? That was interesting. So what about our methods? Different a little bit than the churches? I was told once when I was on the board of the Girl Scouts that there's a 100% correlation between didn't give, wasn't asked. Gerald Panis, the guru of fundraising, told me at a conference some years ago, the best fundraisers are the churches. They pass the plate every Sunday. They ask every Sunday. Well, we've talked at this conference about how maybe that's not working so well, as well as it used to, huh? My gala speech about our work is always followed by someone else asking everyone there to give a gift. After your stewardship sermon, does someone ask for people to give gifts? How do you do that? What do you say? Is it time for churches to add paid gift officers? That's what we did. We have several dozen of them. How many of you have people on staff whose job is development of resources? Okay, that's a few. Are there volunteers in your church who raise money for other organizations or who sit on boards who are asked to raise money? Probably. Was that a late hand up? Could the pastor ask the top 5 donor households to increase their giving? Could you imagine sitting in someone's home saying, we are so grateful for that $7,000 you've given us every single year for 10 years. Could you consider taking it to 10? We're so grateful for the $5,000 you gave us last year. Could you see it on your heart to pray for the possibility of making it more? Pick a number. I appreciate that can be scary, but I was talking to my predecessor in this position. We were having lunch. I was talking about this presentation. We were thinking about some ideas, and he stopped and said, you know, if our pastor came to our home and asked us to give more, we would. And I thought it and said, hey, so would we. Churches hire Kairos, a fundraising firm here in Minnesota, or a mission investment fund to come in and do capital campaigns. That might be a little more comfortable, something you're more used to. Have you ever hired them to increase your annual giving? They would love to do that. Lily, the church's one foundation. I was waiting for Larry Strange's presentation to tell you all about the Lily Grant in southwestern Minnesota, but check that out. They're looking for innovative new things that congregations are doing. What are the possibilities? Thriving in the house? They were. Okay. And the ELCA Foundation deployed staff in some states. Will come in and talk about estate planning in your congregation, adult forums or whatever, or special meetings, followed by you doing an estate plan ask for your church. Just some ways of getting into some of this. Is that uncomfortable? Was for us too. This kind of asking for money was no more in our DNA than it was in yours when we left the Senate budget. In 2004, our September board dinner was in a church basement with 50 to 60 people. In 2005, we took a chance to celebrate our 140th anniversary, that's a typo, by coming up out of the basement. We went to a hotel event space and had 150 people. The next year, we charged $25 a ticket for people to come to our dinner. We hosted 200 people. In 2007, our board actually pressed us to make it into a fundraiser. We raised $80,000 from 392 people. Fast forward 10 years later, last year, we hosted 1,000 people and raised $1 million at our September gala dinner. Two things I want you to take away from that. $1 million, that's the wow. 13 years later, right? There ain't no magic. It's blocking and tackling. It's doing what the Indiana University Center for Philanthropy says to do and doing it well over and over and over until it begins to pay off. We've had to grow into this also. So I get it. When it seems unnatural, you can get used to it. We say how much, another principle of philanthropy. Did you notice I asked you for a certain amount, like the largest bill in your wallet today, instead of just whatever, instead of just whatever you decide, however you're blessed. But when I say that, I mean in a specific ask to individuals in private. So if you're talking about your major givers sitting down, appreciate the $3,000. Can you make it $5,000? That is a very effective approach. The United Way says kind of generally how much. They try to tell people what the average is. Can you do more than the average? How do I stack up? The average gift last year was X. They try to give some calibration to people. The Quran says how much. So does the Bible. We talked about tithing already in the Bible. Do you know the 5 pillars of Islam? One of them is zakat. Giving 2.5% of your wealth every year is a pillar of Islam. It's not 10% of your income, 2.5% of your wealth. Well, yeah, I know it says that, but. So while I was sitting at this conference, I emailed one of my very favorite Somali Muslim leaders here in Minnesota, and I said, honestly, how many of the Somali Muslims here in Minnesota do you think actually give zakat? And he wrote back, 70%. We have so much to learn from our new neighbors. I already thought we had a lot to learn watching them observe the fast of Ramadan, when I kind of sort of maybe give up chocolate sometimes if I feel like it in Lent. 70% still giving zakat. So that's inspiring. People are wondering how much. Young people are wondering how much, because we never talk about money, and we don't talk about money in our homes, and I had no idea how much my parents made. So my personal stewardship experience, my husband and I met and married. Oh, I have to tell you, I always tell the Aggies and the Olies and the Gusties around here that we are proud products of Public University Lutheran Campus Ministry from Michigan State. Go Spartans. My husband and I met and married there, and then stayed for graduate school, eating peanut butter and jelly and macaroni and cheese. But we were invited one day to come back after church, to come back in the afternoon, to a presentation of the ALC's Momentum for Mission curriculum. Anybody remember that? Okay. And they sat and they talked about philanthropy and giving and the biblical basis of giving, and then they asked us to say to ourselves, how much do you make? How much do you give? What's the percentage? Now consider increasing that percentage 1% a year to as much as you can. And my husband and I agreed with each other right then and there in graduate school that we would add a percentage every year until we reached 10%. What a perfect time in life to do that. We'd never gotten used to it yet, right? We hadn't spent any of it. We didn't have a home yet. And we started and we got to 10%. But that's not where the story ends. I was at a United Way presentation at Medtronic when a Lutheran senior executive, who I admire deeply, got up to tell his personal story and said when he and his wife got to 10, they kept going. And they reached 20. And I went home and talked to my husband and I thought, wow, I thought 10% was a ceiling for Lutherans. And we talked about it and decided to follow suit, and we kept going after 10. And then it started to get confusing with the Medtronic stock options and management incentive program. Is like, okay, like 10% of this number or that number, is it pre-tax or after-tax? And somebody mentioned here, why don't you just cut your income in half and you could tithe again or something like that? That's what I did. I left Medtronic, went to Lutheran Social Service, cut my income in half, didn't change the philanthropy, and we hit 20. Now, I totally get that senior Medtronic executives have more disposable income than others. So that was possible. But what I want you to hear is several things. Where did I learn any of this? One, the ALC Momentum for Mission curriculum at my church when I was in campus ministry. And two, the United Way, which has a great way of helping young people, especially as they get into the workforce, think about philanthropy for the first time in their lives. But I was asked when I was 22 to calculate the percent of giving and to consider increasing it, and I have not heard that in my church since. I hope some of you are still doing that. So I want you to notice one of the other things I just did was tell you my own personal stewardship story. I think we're going to talk later about stewardship testimonies. You have people in your congregation that would be willing to stand up and tell their personal story, because no one's got a clue what anybody else does, because no one publishes it anymore. Someone was talking about the church where they had the list and here's how much everybody gave. And they don't do that anymore. And people are wondering, like, what's appropriate? What's good? What's bad? What's a lot? What's not? We don't know. So if people are willing to say, that can be very powerful. Is all that uncomfortable? At least go back and talk about proportional giving. How much do you give? How much do you make? What's the percentage? You should know this. And then think about increasing it. In terms of sitting in someone's living room and asking them for a specific gift, watch a professional do that a few times before you try it yourself. Don't try this at home. And there's lots of folks that you can do that with. Or have somebody from a nonprofit ask you for money and watch and listen and see how they do it, and then try to emulate it. I heard a lot at this about congregations living in rural or urban core neighborhoods. I have experienced those congregations. We're out in congregations a lot, and I find them to be the most joyous worshipers and the most joyous givers. And that's why I feel strongly that we need to ask everyone to give and to consider giving what they have to the communal good. I sit in congregations in the urban core, and I hear that after the joyous gospel music, the pastor asking them all to write down that pledge for next year without a flinch, and they do. And so I'm really inspired by that. I remember when our board kicked off the campaign to build our Center for Changing Lives in South Minneapolis, our board chair said, boy, I don't know about the board leading the way on this campaign. You know, we have a lot of pastors on the board. I said, well, that's really interesting, because the pastor that we have on the board, one of the pastors that we have on the board, gives the largest absolute gift to LSS of anyone else on the board. Another favorite story was a young man who was sleeping under a bridge in Duluth. When we found him, he came to be served by our homeless youth services there, and he left us to go to join the Marines. And he came back one day in full dress uniform and wrote us a check. And with that single check, joined our leadership circle of donors. Be careful the assumptions that you make about the people that you're asking for money from. Two truths. The people in the pews are accustomed to being asked by professional fundraisers. We're asking them, everybody's asking them. You've seen the mail on your kitchen counter, right, coming in, and people are going to events, and they're hearing these professional fundraisers asking for gifts. If you could learn how they do it, you could use that in your church. But we're still second. I really want you to come away with that hope. People sit with us and say, well, first we give to our church, and then to pick a thing, you know, LSS, the seminary, their college. And a whole lot of baby boomer Lutherans still do all four, and/or Lutheran World Relief, and/or pick another, right? There's room for everyone. There's plenty of abundance. Just a side note, because I'm deep into it right now, I'm thinking about stewardship of your property. Have you thought about that? LSS is taking over the management of the building of River of Life Lutheran Church in North Minneapolis. We'll be renting it out to ourselves and to other like-minded nonprofits. Some of you know Redeemer Center for Life in North Minneapolis, working together to make a difference in the neighborhood and to take the building budget off of the back of the Word and Sacrament ministry at River of Life Lutheran Church. Augsburg University is taking over the building at Bethany Lutheran Church in Cedar Riverside, doing the very same thing. Merrick Community Services is a secular nonprofit in St. Paul, moving into Gustavus Adolphus Lutheran Church. Same sort of thing. Rent can take your building operating costs out of your budget. In cities, you can charge $20 a square foot to organizations. You can find that and make a big difference in your church. But the real reason is now you're not only proclaiming the gospel, you're feeding the hungry in your church building. And tutoring students after school and preparing weekend backpacks and behavioral health services and providing youth a drop-in center, doing caregiver respite, and now you have the for what? For your church's annual stewardship drive. And what if that also increased attendance at worship and membership? Last week we said goodbye to a 20-year fundraiser at LSS, one of our really effective and faithful people. And what she was saying at her goodbye party was that what she remembers so deeply is my predecessor once told her that fundraising is a priestly function. You sit with people in their homes and you talk with them about their most deeply held values. And you find ways for them to match those values with how they use their money. And that's a priestly function. So a few things in conclusion. Please be careful about what's in your head, about what's in your members' heads. We live in a world of unprecedented abundance, and if we say it enough, it'll be true. People want meaning and to make a difference, and especially the Gen XYZ and millennials. People love to give to people who love to ask. And there are people who love to ask. We know what works to raise money. It's very clear. There's things that work. Offering a people a chance, especially to put their money to work in places that match their values. We can keep doing what doesn't work, or we can start doing what does work. And I love my church. And I would urge all of you to assume this priestly function and ask boldly of your members to match their values with the use of their money and to remind them that Jesus' values are some of the greatest the world has ever seen. And my church said, Amen. Thank you.